Hey there, guys, and welcome back to the Travis and Damian podcast, episode 167. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. Today, we're talking about Ironheart, Squid Game Season 3, James Gunn's Superman, HBO's The Last of Us Season 3, and more. But first, we will begin with our discussion on Ironheart, the 6-episode miniseries. It released over the course of 2 weeks, 3-episode batches. It will finally dive back into Riri Williams, who was introduced within Black Panther Wakanda Forever, all the way back in like 2021 or something like that. So yeah, it has been a very, very long time since we've seen her within the MCU, but they finally were able to bring this show onto Disney Plus, and we are going to talk about full spoilers for this discussion. But yeah, first up, I just want to say that I personally really enjoyed the series. I thought that it did start off pretty slow, not gonna lie, but I think once we got up to, I guess, the finale, like the mid-season finale with episode 3, when stuff was really getting going, I really enjoyed it. And then it sort of did the same thing again with episode 4 and 5, building up what was going on between Riri and the Hood, and then the finale was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I liked it. I wouldn't say I was like a massive fan or anything, but I think it was better than most of the MCU shows that we've gotten. I do feel like it does go back to certain things that I'm not too sure about MCU shows. Like, I guess because it's like an origin story still, so they have to do the standard stuff. Yeah. But I do like the more human elements of the show. Like that stuff is really good, and it kind of carries the whole show, if I'm going to be honest. We'll get more into it when we talk about like the like the villain group. I don't remember what they were called, but like the Hood was good. Riri's relationship with her friends and family is good, but some of the other stuff felt just pretty standard to me, but it was still good.
Mm-hmm. Because this is definitely a show that I believe they were developing during when they were treating the MCU shows as just, 6-episode, really long movies, if you will. They weren't developing them as television shows like what they're doing with Daredevil, Born Again, and Agatha. They treated this as, like you said, a origin story once again, something in the same vein as like Hawkeye, or even with Captain America and the Winter Soldier of a Sam Wilson becoming Captain America, et cetera, et cetera. So, for this show, I thought that for what it is, right? I think the stakes of it don't feel all that high. I think, what's it called? Riri Williams, like I said, it's been so long since we've seen her within the MCU. For this show to bring it back to us as the fans, to sort of remind us exactly who she is as a character, was a lot of fun. Her struggle of wanting to be the next Iron Man, and why she wants to be the next Iron Man because of what happened between her best friend and her stepfather, sort of have that human element come back in and really be the reason why she is so obsessed with building the suit of armor, and why she really needs the money, which is why she eventually goes to the Hood and sort of works with him and all that other stuff. But yeah, I think for the most part, the show worked for me, but I could understand why some people were meh on it or felt like the writing wasn't all that great. But overall, I really enjoyed the series.
Yeah, like I said, it was mostly like the human elements of the show that were good, and I felt that way about a lot of the MCU shows. Like some of the human elements in Falcon and Winter Soldier, not Secret Invasion because that show was bad, but WandaVision, even Agatha. Like honestly, like I like a lot of the characters in Agatha and how that show dealt with a lot of issues. It's just more when it feels like, oh, we have to have like the big bad or some conflict that feels a bit forced. Hood was good though. I didn't really care much about the rest of his gang. They were just there to be there. I feel they didn't get a lot of character development. Mm-hmm. So I felt like that part of the show was a little off. But the rest of it, I did enjoy. I think Riri's trauma with asking for help, her anxieties and just dealing with all this stuff by herself and thinking she has to deal it with herself to keep people safe. That is a pretty relatable thing. Maybe not against like gangs coming out for your family or whatever, but just dealing with those issues and thinking you could bottle it up all inside. I think they handled that situation good. And Natalie, her friend, I think was a good anchor for her as well to sort of bring her back to just being like a person and not worrying about her iron suit or getting good grades or being a superhero, right? Like, I think they nailed that part of the show well. And I'm glad a majority of the focus was on that towards the later half of the show. It's just when she becomes Ironheart and starts doing the normal MCU stuff, it's like, okay, I know where this is going, right? Except the ending, which we'll talk about. That did surprise me, and I did like the show had the gall to do what it did. But yes, I do think a lot of it did felt kind of standard until that point. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of my favorite moments within this series was episode 3, just like as a whole, just seeing how this heist was going to be pulled off while at the same time Riri trying to investigate like who the Hood is and sort of why he's so obsessed with his cloak. And at the end, when she leaves John just in there just to have him suffocate and die, that really shocked me. I was like, oh my God, like that is something that she did. Like she murdered him, if you will. And that is a action that sort of goes on throughout the rest of the series. Obviously, it affects Hood and his gang and exactly why, the way he operates, right? Like we get to see within the following episode, because I thought before going into episode 4, I was like, I wish we got that flashback stuff between John and Parker way before, but I think it was actually smart of them to do it after so they could continue to use that character and use that background story for the Hood. And yeah, I just thought that overall, like that episode and sort of those actions and those consequences were engaging and compelling for me to obviously continue watching throughout the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, and to show that Riri isn't like a perfect hero, like at all.
Yes.
If anything, she is pretty selfish, and the show does a good job illustrating that through her friendships, using I'm forgetting his name, the Ironmonger's son, using his like his bio mesh thing, and then letting him take the fall for that as well. I think all that stuff really like compounded towards like I think like the second or no, I think it was also that episode, the third episode, where she's just totally freaking out. All her friends are like leaving her because like, you're a horrible person, Riri. Why are you doing this? And it showed that she can't handle this all on her own, or she can't like keep relying on other people to do things, like giving her stuff and not following through. I thought all that stuff was really good for her character. And same thing with the Parker and I'm forgetting his name, the other guy who dies.
John.
I thought John. I thought their relationship was pretty good. Like you said, I think it was better to have the flashback later, so you kind of learn like how important he was after the fact. Because I also just feel like a throwaway character, but he did a good job sort of feeding that into how important he was to Parker in general. I will say, like, I think the Parker stuff, like I said before, Hood, I think is a good character. I do think they do kind of brute force his backstory a little bit towards the end, where he's like daddy's boy, daddy issues or whatever. That felt low brute force, but I do like what he was going for there. And he had good intentions, but he got corrupted by Mephisto, which we'll talk about later. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's like one of my biggest problems with the finale is sort of how it all comes together, right? Where it's just revealed that like that house that they were robbing all the way back then was actually his dad that abandoned him and all of that. Like I was just like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. Once again, another problem with the older MCU shows, which this is technically one of them, where 6 episodes doesn't feel like enough. Maybe they could have slotted in one more episode, but even then it could have just dragged the show on for too long, et cetera, et cetera. But, I think that for what it is, for what they did with his character and his story, I felt like it was good enough. He is obviously the main antagonist, and he's a lot more compelling than I would say a lot of the previous MCU villains that we've gotten within recent years. Going back to Zeke and sort of that character, how he gets tangled up with Riri Williams and how she's trying to get all of these black market parts, and she kind of uses him as that vessel to do so. And she's like, yeah, I got you. I won't, mess this up and it won't get traced back to you. And then it does. And obviously he has his own little revenge arc, if you will, where he's trying to get back at Riri because he feels betrayed, which is definitely fair because she is so reckless and so flawed as a character, which I really like. Like when you think about the previous, I guess, Iron person within the MCU, Iron Man, Tony Stark, he was not perfect either. I feel like a lot of people forget about that. Like within the first Avengers, Captain America very much says that like he would not stand on a grenade for the little guy. And then at the end of Endgame, he does that. So that character development that we see throughout the entire timeline of the MCU is something that I think people are not reminded of, where Tony Stark was a piece of shit. He had to go through all of these trials and tribulations to really get to where he is. And I think Riri Williams, not to necessarily compare them directly, but she is going on a somewhat similar trajectory where she is going to have to learn the hard way of like what's right and what's wrong. Because obviously, the show starts with her messing around with villains, if you will, to get her money for her own selfish gains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's actually an interesting part. I don't know why I didn't put that together myself, where it is very similar to Tony Stark, where, again, Tony Stark wasn't really the greatest person in Iron Man 1 or 2 or even 3. It took him a while, basically up until his death, at least for now, until Doomsday. I don't know what's going to happen there. But until his death, where I felt like he really felt like a true hero, like he took all his selfish desires away and did what was good for the planet, or even like their whole world against Thanos, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like Riri is going to go through a similar arc, maybe not as big or grand as Tony Stark, and not to compare the two directly because they are separate characters, but it does seem like that's where they're going with this story arc. As with the finale, we see that things don't end cleanly, which I do enjoy a lot. It shows that this character, even though the whole show, we know what she should be doing, and she probably knows what she should be doing as well. But it does show her hubris as a character, thinking she could outsmart basically anyone, including Mephisto, like a fucking demon from another dimension. So I think that's what they were going with, sort of like her final deal at the end, just to talk about that, where... Yes. I think she made the deal with Mephisto to bring back Natalie because I think she knows that she could outsmart Mephisto and maybe she could have her cake and eat it too. But that probably isn't going to be the case as we see her arrive getting corrupted from Mephisto at the very end of that scene. So, I'm sure that's going to be a whole thing in either Ironheart 2 or some other movie that she's going to be a part in. And I see some people online saying they don't like this ending because it kind of betrays like almost like the second half of the show where, all her friends are saying, oh, we got your back. She see what happens to Parker by trusting Mephisto. He becomes like a demon guy, right? Yeah. But I do think, and there's a part of me that feels that too. Like it does feel a bit weird that she would still go through with the deal knowing her friends have her back now and she see what happens to Parker. But I do like it for her character because it seems like something she would do. Like, even though she really has all this support and stuff, she could really think like, hey, I could outsmart this, get Natalie back, and still like kick this demon's ass or something, right? So a part of me does like the ending because of how non-Marvel it feels. It does feel very much like it took a risk there to make it like a not clean, squeaky ending. And I do like that, but I can see how it could be contentious just for how it ends and how it kind of betrays all the character growth she had this season, right? So
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in that camp where I did not necessarily really like the ending, but the more you're talking about it, the more I can get behind your viewpoint as well.
Yeah.
Because when I saw that, I was like, damn, like she really did take that deal and she really did bring Natalie back, which throughout the season we see how important her relationship with her was, how much that she really loved her and cared for her in that event where she tragically died within a drive-by accident. Yeah. It was just like, okay, yeah, like there's definitely a good reason why she took the deal with Mephisto, but like you said, with sort of like the second half of the season where we see what happens with Parker, even Riri gets to see what happens with Parker under this spell with Mephisto. It's like, was that really the right call? But I guess we'll see. I'm sure that there were plans at one point to make Strange Academy or something like that, and maybe that would have dealt into that aspect of this show where it's like they have to now somehow get Riri Williams out of that spell that's going on there. And yeah, honestly, like I think whatever they do next, whether it is a Ironheart season 2 or even go forward with Strange Academy, whatever the case is, I am excited to see where this goes. With the whole Mephisto reveal, if you will, people have been predicting this character to make his debut within the MCU for like years now, ever since I want to say WandaVision. People were like, oh, wait, is that Mephisto doing everything behind the scenes within WandaVision? But then it ended up being Agatha, I believe. So, I just want to see where this goes. Where do they take Mephisto? Because he is such a popular Marvel villain, if you will. I'm not entirely sure exactly where that will entail, but I do like the magic elements that they also added within Ironheart as well, just like in general, because obviously we see that montage scene of her within Zeke's basement where she's trying to destroy the cloak and she's like, I cannot do anything with this stuff, like actual just like science and trial and error and all that. But she has to use magic. And I honestly really like that about her suit. And for her to even go deeper within within that with Mephisto is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with Mephisto, because he's obviously going to be a mainstay in the MCU, I imagine. Obviously they have bigger threats like Galactus and Doctor Doom, but he does seem like a fun, maybe not side villain, but a villain that could show up whenever. Maybe Doctor Strange would deal with him. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see where to go for from here. Because I actually do like the magic element of the MCU quite a bit. So, and I do like that they fuse the sci-fi with the magic in the show. Like, I thought her final suit was pretty neat to like combine those two elements together. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what to do with this character, either in, like you said, Ironheart season 2, another project. I don't really know. This project was in production hell for years, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's good. It's good. Like, I think it's definitely like in the middle of the pack for me in terms of MCU shows. Definitely not the worst, but not my favorite. But it's good. Like, I think if you enjoyed like the good MCU Disney Plus shows, I think you enjoyed this one as well.
Yeah, this one was definitely a surprise considering the direction they're currently going with the Marvel television slate. For this to be the last old project within the MCU of them just making, like I said, one big long movie and not really considering sort of like televised episodes, if you will. This one was still really, really solid, and I am excited to see, like I said, where this takes us, whether it's with Riri Williams as Ironheart or Mephisto, anything and everything regarding the show, I am looking forward to. All right, so let's talk about recent activities. I will go first. There's actually a movie that I watched literally just last night. That's why it's not in the notes, but it is, you may have heard of it. KPop Demon Hunters. This is a Netflix animated K-pop animated movie. It is kind of taking over social media if you are in that space of K-pop music. Me personally, when it comes to that background of music, I love pop music, K-pop. I listen to like BTS and like their solo stuff, but like once those albums are done with their, I guess, like press tour or whatever, I don't really listen to them outside of that. Obviously, there's still songs out there that are bangers and everything like that. But K-Pop Demon Hunters, this is a really good movie. This is another animated film that has the Spider-Verse effect, if you will. Yeah. The animation is just top notch. I believe Sony also worked on this, so I'm not surprised that it has a similar look, if you will, to it. But it is just a really solid movie. I honestly wish that this released in theaters because K-pop heads are fucking crazy and they will watch anything related to that genre and sort of their fandom. But to have this movie come out and be as good as it is, especially animation wise, I am very surprised. And on top of that, the songs, obviously, K-pop music, you gotta have some songs in there, and every single one within the film is like a banger. It is kind of insane that they were able to write and produce and make these songs as good as they are. These singers are not the same as the voice actors, but that shouldn't discredit the film at all. I honestly really like that they knew that there were limitations of, there were limitations with the voice actors and they had to get other people to sing the songs. And that is not that bad. The story itself is not going to amaze you or anything, but it will keep you engaged from start to finish. It is less than 2 hours long. I think they wanted to make this like really, really long. I honestly thought that this was a series at first just because of like how many screenshots and everything that I saw on social media, but it's actually a movie. So there likely will be a sequel because apparently the director and several other people were talking about it where it was like, yeah, Netflix asked us to like cut it down to less than 2 hours to make it more digestible, which is understandable. But yeah, if you have Netflix and you are a K-pop fan or even just like animated movies in general, K-pop Demon Hunters is pretty good. I honestly forgot that there was like a demon hunter aspect to it. And that kind of threw me off in the beginning. I was like, oh yeah, wait, the whole movie is called K-pop Demon Hunters. Anyways, yeah, pretty good film. I finished The Bear season 4. This is probably my most anticipated television season within the past, I guess, like quarter, if you will, like the past 3 months or whatever. And a lot of people like to shit talk season 3. I honestly thought season 3 wasn't that bad. Maybe it's because I'm remembering the really solid episodes from that season. But I think season 4 goes back to how season 1 and 2 felt because season 3 was definitely a season where they knew like they had the clout, right? Like they knew that they were the hot shit. They got so many Emmys and whatnot. So they kind of switched it up on people and people did not like it. But I think season 4 really brings it back to where the show was before. It's just about them trying to run a restaurant and the relationships and the characters and sort of how they want to have this work or to work in the kitchen and have their decisions and their emotions, their relationships be at risk. I don't want to spoil anything for Damian because I know he's going to watch this show at some point, but it is very, very good. There's one episode in here that's like an hour long. It takes place at a wedding. And honestly, that's probably the best episode this season because The Bear doesn't really like to have consistent time lengths for their episodes. Some episodes are like 20 minutes long. Some are 30, some are 40. And that hour-long episode that was at the wedding was pretty solid. And even the finale, I'm excited to see where this series goes because it was greenlit for a season 5 shortly after it premiered because I don't think it was greenlit before. So people were like, are we going to get a season 5 or not? But season 5 has been confirmed. And yeah, I'm excited for that. But yeah, overall season 4, really, really good. If you have not watched The Bear in a while, I would definitely recommend rewatch the seasons because I definitely rewatched season 1 and then jumped into season 4. Then I had to remind myself of all the other character development that happened throughout. Anyways, The Bear is very good. Now I will talk about comic books, hopefully for not too long. So first up, I just want to bring this to light. We got a Mega Man one-shot series that they got going on. It is called Mega Man Timelines. So every single issue is going to take place during a specific era of Mega Man. Damian probably knows more about Mega Man than me. So first up, we got the classic series. Pretty good story, just surrounding the original Rock, if you will. And then I think the next one's going to be X, and then they're going to do Zero and all that other stuff. So yeah, just keep an eye out on that if you are a Mega Man fan. One of my most anticipated comics as of late is the new run on Captain America, written by Chip Zdarsky. If you guys know me, I love Daredevil. I love Chip's run on Daredevil, even his stuff on Spider-Man as well. I've never read a Captain America comic book, but if it's written by Chip Zdarsky, I will be there. And the fact that they dropped this the week of 4th of July, I was like, okay, yeah, like they have confidence in this. And it is pretty damn good. I think the first issue really does solidify and really give you a understanding of where this Captain America is, because I think literally the first page is of 9/11, just by the way. So, that's when Captain America wakes up from the ice, and you get to see how his relationship with the other heroes plays out, because you got Iron Man, you got Mr. Fantastic, and they all have a different understanding of where Steve Rogers is coming from. So yeah, a very different take on Captain America from my understanding. Yeah, I am excited to see where this run goes. I'll probably talk about it once the first arc is finished and I have a complete story in my head. Now we got some trades. I read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles. I read this years ago, but I have the sequel, so I was like, I might as well reread the first one. Pretty much, if you like either one of these properties, Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers, you should definitely pick up this book and read it. The third crossover is going to come out soon, so no better time than to start reading now. Pretty much, they have a similar conflict. The turtles have to go to, I think, Angel Grove or whatever to save one of them or something like that. I forget exactly what happens, but it is a good crossover. Just understand, if you like either one, Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers, just read it. And last we got here is Nightwing by Dan Watters. If you guys have been listening to the podcast recently, maybe the past few episodes anyways, I read Nightwing by Tom Taylor, probably one of my favorite modern comic book runs. I know a lot of people do not like Tom Taylor's run because of certain issues that happen in like the middle where it kind of meanders and all this other stuff. Understandable. But Dan Watters' run, I believe this is the first 6 issues, 119 to 124. It's pretty much a gang war. So, like, shit is happening really, really fast. And Nightwing is trying to keep Bloodhaven under control to make sure that blood is not being spilled all across town. So, yeah, it is a pretty good run so far. I have the other issues to catch up on it. But yeah, if you like Nightwing and you are interested to start on the character, I would definitely not start here personally, because I think there's a lot of background that you're missing with the character. I think Tom Taylor did a better job of introducing introducing to the reader who Nightwing is and his backstory within the Bat family, etc., etc. But if you just want a good action comic, obviously Nightwing by Dan Watters is also not that bad either. And that's pretty much everything.
Alrighty, so for what I've been doing, I've just been playing two things, mostly just one thing, but I'll talk about the thing I was playing less of, which is Persona 5 X. So I talked about this last podcast where I said it was good. It's a good game, you know, in terms of gacha game standards. It really follows the formula of Persona 5 to a T. You go through your daily life, you go through palaces, you fight bosses. Everything you expect from a Persona 5 game specifically is in this game, and I think it's pretty good. I finished the first palace to the first boss, and everything was good. Like, the story is still kind of like not great because you're dealing with the subway slammer, and that's been memed to death on Twitter, on Reddit, everywhere I've been seeing is like, maybe got a poor subway slammer. And he is a pretty lame first boss, and I know the story gets a lot better as the Persona 5 Royal writer. I think he worked on Persona 5 Royal, Strikers, and Tactica. He takes over writing duties after the third palace, I believe. So the story does get a lot better, I've heard. But even just gameplay wise, I think the game is a ton of fun. Like, the first palace is huge. There's a ton of extra rooms to explore once you finish the main boss fight. And there's fun little puzzles to do. There's some challenging enemies to fight. Like I said before, I think the combat feels pretty good for a gacha game. You have enough options to make the combat interesting while still keeping it simplistic for mobile game players, but not keeping it too simple where someone that actually plays these type of games gets bored of them easily. That's the reason why I couldn't get into Honkai Star Rail, because you only had like 2 buttons in that game to use. Yeah, your basic attack, your special, and your ultimate, and that was just not enough for me. This game at least gives you 3 different regular abilities to use. Plus, you can knock down enemies, the enemy resistances, ultimate attacks. You know, you have the whole shebang there. You have Persona Fusion as well. So it just keeps the gameplay fresh. And I thought the gameplay wise is very fun, but it has been getting a lot of controversy recently, as it has done its big patch like a week ago, or no, just like a few days ago actually. It's been getting a lot of heat as Sega is deciding to accelerate the patch cycle. So we are getting patches faster, which sounds like a good thing since the Chinese servers are a year ahead of us. But in gacha game terms, that's bad because we're also getting new characters and less events and rewards than usual. So we're getting all this content where a lot of people are going to feel burnt out. And then you can't really save for the characters you want because they keep releasing these characters at a faster pace without increasing the amount of premium currency you get for free. And this has resulted in a really big backlash. Like on Steam, I believe it went down to mixed reviews. Everyone's been complaining on Twitter and on Reddit and all the other social medias. So hopefully Sega sees this issue and kind of either slows down the patch cycle, or they just give global players more rewards. Because I do think it's kind of unfair to have this accelerated patch cycle and not like compensate global players as well. And it'll be such a shame too, because I think the game has a ton of quality to it. Like, I think it's a ton of fun. Obviously, it has all the mobile game trappings. It has like ads, it has the memberships, it has all the other gacha game stuff. But when you look past that, it's a pretty well built game, and I do want to enjoy it more than I am. But all this stuff with the rewards and the accelerated patches, that is a big damper of me wanting to play more of it. But I'm going to wait until what Sega says. Hopefully they could fix these issues, because it'll be a shame for this game to just go under due to greed for no reason, right? But anyway, the next big game I've been playing is Deltarune. Last podcast, I believe I just replayed through Chapter 1. Now I played through the whole game, Chapters 1 through 4, and the game is fantastic. Deltarune is a fantastic follow-up to Undertale in every single way. Every chapter kept getting better and better. Like, when I went to Chapter 2, I thought it was a huge upgrade from Chapter 1. And then Chapter 3 happened. I'm like, oh, wow, this is so creative and cool. So many great gameplay things. The writing is hilarious. And then Chapter 4 just hits you with, like, the actual plot and shit. And it gets mad real. I'm like, oh, this shit is peak, man. It's awesome. So, you know, like I said before, I love how this game really evolves the gameplay formula of Undertale. It's still a turn-based RPG, but obviously the whole gimmick with Undertale is you could fight or spare enemies. This game is the exact same way. It doesn't have as much emphasis on a pacifist or genocide route, but you do get a lot more benefit of doing a pacifist run, as I believe that's the canon way to play the game. And the genocide stuff is more downplayed in this game as of now. We don't know. There is like a genocide-y route, but it's a lot more specific to get to it. And the scenes that change are a lot smaller than Undertale. But I'm sure there is once the full game is out, I'm sure there's going to be like a more expanded upon version of that. But basically, since the game has 2 other party members, yourself included, it makes for more tactical combat. So you could choose to like act on an enemy with one character, and if their mercy bar goes up, you could spare with the other character. You gain a resource called TP, and you can spend that on different spells such as healing or putting the enemy to sleep, and that adds more complexity to the gameplay. This also goes to enemies as well, as the enemy sort of targets different party members, so it won't just be you getting hit all the time. And it just adds like this extra layer of strategicness to the combat, which I think was missing in Undertale, like normal Undertale, because in that game it was basically just a bullet hell, but you could choose to like fight, which wasn't really a whole, you just like kind of press the button and fight, or Mercy where you have to like act out for different things. This one definitely feels like the combat mechanics are a big step up from Undertale, and I like that a lot. And that really shines through with the secret bosses. I've done all of them, and they're a ton of fun. They're really hard, but they really emphasize how much improved the combat system is in this game. I had an absolute blast with all the secret bosses. In Chapter 3s especially, even though that one was very fucking hard, that was a ton of fun, and I loved it a lot. The music is fucking just fantastic as well. Toby Fox composes some of the best gaming music ever, and that goes true with Deltarune as well. All these pieces are so good, from the overall tracks to the boss encounters to the regular enemy encounters. Everything about the soundtrack is fantastic. And of course, the writing, it's still really funny. He knows how to tell a good joke while still keeping the tone serious when it has to be. He knows how to break tension when things are getting a little bit too serious, but he also knows when to like keep things, in a serious manner, especially towards the end of Chapter 4, where things get really real at that point. Overall, Deltarune is very good. And if you haven't played it yet, if you're waiting for the full Deltarune experience, as this is still coming out episodic. So right now we're on Chapter 4, and next year we're getting Chapter 5. And there's supposed to be 7 chapters. So if you want to wait for that, I won't argue with that. But I will say, I think playing chapters 1 through 4 is a good stopping point, since that is very clearly like a mid-season finale, if you will, and it ends at a pretty good note. Like, you have a lot of questions you have in your little head thinking about what's going to happen next and stuff. But I do think playing chapters 1 through 4, it feels like a pretty good experience. And I'm sure once Chapter 5 and stuff comes out, it's sort of like the start of the second half of the story. But yeah, overall, Deltarune is fantastic. I actually rebought Undertale on Switch, and I'm really interested in playing through that game again, since it's been like 10 years since I played it on Steam. I checked it. It was like November 2015 was the last time I played that game. Oh my God. And I still like adore that game. And I went through like the first like 2 hours of Undertale again. I'm like, yeah, this game is still a banger. And I would actually like to do the genocide route, as I never did that back then because I felt bad. I'm like, I don't want to do that because that's mean. But now I want to do all the endings again. I want to do neutral, pacifist, and then genocide at the end. So we'll see if I could talk about that next podcast. But yeah, Deltarune, absolute banger. 100% play it. It's really good.
Okay, now let's get into the next section of our, recent activities, which is Squid Game Season 3. We'll also talk about Season 2 a little bit, because I did not finish Season 2 when it came out. From the look of it, at the end of last year. So, yeah, just straight up, first up, this was Damian's idea, not to throw him under the bus. But when it comes to Squid Game, I really thought Season 1 was just so freaking good that there was no reason to have a sequel. I honestly thought that making a sequel was a bad idea. This show literally took over everything within 2021 when that season came out. I was like, okay, yeah, like this show is solid. It's really, really good. Everyone's talking about it, raving about it. I feel like Netflix hasn't had a show like that in so long. And then this show comes along, and then it's like, oh my God, everyone's talking about Squid Game. And then it's like they have that ending, and then they announce that there's going to be multiple seasons, or maybe even just Season 2, and then Season 3, and they film them back to back. And I was like, okay, I get it. I get why they're doing it, because if something's good, you got to keep it going. That's sort of like Hollywood's mentality, if you will. But I don't know. I just felt like Season 1 was just amazing, perfect to a T, exactly what kind of story they wanted to tell. And for them to just continue that, I was just like, all right, like my eyes are rolling. I'm not going to necessarily pay attention as much. But after watching Season 2 and 3, it was kind of impressive, but at the same time, it kind of met my expectations of like, what are we doing here? A lot of it kind of just meanders. I'm kind of questioning like why are characters doing certain things, and the new cast, I will say, I was very surprised by how much I was like getting emotionally invested into them. I was like, why the fuck is this happening? Like, why are you doing this? You're a fucking idiot, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So, like I was getting into it, but at the same time, I'm like, the first season of characters felt like so tight knit and really satisfied me in terms of what I wanted from Squid Game.
Yeah, I basically feel the exact same way. Season 1, even the director, I believe, said he only written this for one season and he didn't really have plans for season 2 or beyond. But Netflix handed him the bag and it's like, okay, I'll do more. It's kind of not fair to even call it a season 3 or 2. It basically is just season 2. Like season 3 is just part 2 of season 2. And as such, I'll probably just refer to it as just Squid Game 2, basically, because that's what it is. And yeah, it's basically like, I think the games are still fun. They still provide that commentary about human greed and how bad capitalism is and how bad the world is and how people take advantage of these people. The rich ruin everything, that fun stuff. But I do feel like a lot of the outside stuff, I even felt this way about Squid Game 1, where I feel like the more you learn about the games, the less interesting it gets. And that's like how basically anything works. Like a lot of horror things works that way, where it's like, they want to explain how the monster works or how this organization works. And then you take away all the mystery from it and it just doesn't become as interesting. I feel like this season does that a lot, where I think the games are interesting as like sort of like a metaphor for human greed and what the lengths of people would do to get that money in general and how the system has basically messed them up so much that they're in this position to begin with. And I think that idea is more interesting than like how these Squid Games with the VIP people are coming in. Like it kind of just takes away all the mystery from it and just makes it like kind of lame. And then we're getting like American Squid Game. I'm like, bro, let's just stop it now. But yeah, like you said, I actually do enjoy a lot of the cast of season 2. Like the mother character, we had a good, trans representation with her character. I really enjoyed her character a ton. Obviously the main guy, he actually doesn't do that much, to be honest. He starts like, Ji-hoon. He starts like a revolution and that fails miserably. And then he has to deal with some stuff towards, in season 3. But I did enjoy a lot of the characters. The issue is like a lot of them, I mean, just like full spoilers, by the way, a lot of them like die like immediately as soon as season 3 starts. And then the finale is just like a bunch of no names, which was a very weird decision to do. But yeah, I think this series just felt like it was retreading a lot of what was already said in season 1. Like I felt like there wasn't much this series could say that wasn't said in the first one. I actually there is a part of me that does kind of like the ending a bit more to this than how the first one ended, where the first one, he ended up winning the game. Obviously, he felt bad about it. But in this one, he ends up basically killing himself to deny that right for the VIPs. I actually do like that. And we're going to do that in Hunger Games as well, just to bring Hunger Games into this, where Katniss and fucking PETA, whatever, we're just going to fucking kill themselves just to deny anyone their entertainment and be like, this is not what we stand for. We're humans are better than this. And I actually like those endings a bit more when it comes to these like corporate greed type games. But, then they have the whole baby situation, and it's like a whole thing.
God.
So, baby plot device.
That's the problem with season 3, right? Because season 2 ends where it's like everyone's dead, everyone's fucking dead, and all of the main characters that you've been following are no longer there. Obviously, there are still some like the mom and the son duo. I thought that was such an interesting dynamic where they both somehow end up in these games because of the debts they both have. Or maybe she was just trying to help him with his debt. I forget exactly. But just having them two in the games together to see where it's going to go, where potentially they might have to kill each other at one point, which is eventually what happens because the son is a piece of shit. There's so many times where it's like he can do the right thing or he just has to do this to sort of make it to the next phase or whatever, but he just fucking fumbles it. And with this one, it's like he has to kill someone. And throughout the entire time throughout that game, it was just like he was not doing that. So when the mom's like, you are not killing like this brand new mom, which by the way, like she should not have been able to walk around after giving birth. Right. I was like, what the fuck is going on? you know, like that whole dynamic, and then eventually afterwards, I think it was literally within season 3, episode 1, where she just kills herself or whatever.
Yeah,
I was like, what the fuck are we doing? And like that was like the last interesting character that I was really grappled onto. And then after that, it was kind of just like, all right, now we're just playing the games out kind of thing.
Yeah, mostly because, like I said, with all the fan favorite characters of season 2 end up dying really early in season 3. So you're left with a bunch of like shitheads, like the old dude, Minsu, who also sucks, Bitcoin guy. Like all these people suck, and they don't have as nearly as much stakes in the stuff as Ji-hoon's friend in season 1. As it was his childhood friend, they had a lot of history. So when they did that one-on-one final Squid Game, it ended up being a lot more interesting because there was a lot of personal drama. You know, it made the games more interesting, but he also didn't want to kill him either because that's what they want from him. So the finale of season 1 ended up being fantastic because of that. With this season, it just feels like, okay, it's just a bunch of jobbers, the main antagonist of the season plus our hero, right? And it just ends up not feeling super great. And like Bitcoin guy was a really weak final antagonist, not gonna lie.
Yes.
I'm just like, dude, I don't care. Like he's like, oh, this baby isn't mine anymore, so I'm just gonna murk the baby. I'm like, okay. And I get what they're trying to say at the end where, and it was shown, again, this was shown in season 1 anyway, so I don't know why they're repeating the thing. But, you know, Ji-hoon was like, we are better than this, you know, humanity is better than to like kill each other for prize money. We're not going to give you the satisfaction of seeing us kill each other for your entertainment. And then he kills himself. And I know the baby is supposed to represent sort of like the purity of humanity, I guess. Like this baby did nothing wrong, and then it's like ironic the baby won in the end because it's like pure and humanity is pure or whatever. That's what I'm getting from the ending, but it still comes off as like baby plot device, and there you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I get what they're trying to do with the ending. Also, another thing I want to add is the boat crew was fucking useless this season.
My God,
they didn't
bro.
do shit. The detective last season did a lot because obviously the front man is his brother, and there was a lot of drama there. And he ended up doing a lot, infiltrating the Squid Game base and finding out all the secrets or whatever, and then gets shot at the end. This season, he's like trying to look for the island for like 2 seasons. It doesn't do shit. He literally doesn't do anything. His friend did all the work, finding out that the boat guy was a Squid Game dude. And then he's like, dude, fucking run. This dude, you shouldn't trust him. And he told him that like 5 times this season, and he kept going anyway. And then he gets all the money and the baby.
Yes.
Like, he didn't do shit. So, yeah. So like you said before, season 1 basically addressed a lot of the issues that Squid Game 1 was trying to address anyway, and it just does it worse and more drawn out. And then we get the beautiful cliffhanger of American Squid Game, which is going to be straight ass. Like that I'm not watching. At least this I was arriving like I want to see what happens at least because I like Squid Game 1. American Squid Game, that could go to the slot pile. That's okay.
Yeah,
So,
and I found it so funny within season 2. I completely like dozed off and forgot that like Ji-hoon had a daughter. So I think at the start of season 3, he talks about his daughter because of the baby. And I'm like, oh yeah, he has a fucking daughter. I forget about that. That's the thing with Squid Game as a whole within these 2 seasons, that there's a lot of shit going on and nothing ever gets enough attention. Like you said, with the whole boat crew, like once Ji-hoon gets separated from them, it's like 2 different. Like, I feel like within season 2, once that happens, it's like a completely different show. Like now we are in the Squid Game portion, and then the boat crew's kind of just like dicking around or whatever. Oh yeah, the captain did some really shady stuff. He just fucking killed this guy. And then, oh yeah, he is part of the Squid Game stuff. And even like the front man, like when he joined the games, when he was number 1, I was like, all right, that's interesting. But I'm like, what's his play here? We never really know, other than him trying to fuck around with Ji-hoon, make sure that once he does get to that point where he's going to do this whole revolution thing, that it goes all south. Everything goes fucking wrong, and he's the one to really be the catalyst of that. And because we know that the front man was number 1, if you will, when he does confront Ji-hoon about it, I'm like, all right, like, where's this gonna go? And it really doesn't go anywhere other than him being like, I feel betrayed or whatever. And I'm just like, all right, whatever. Like, we're just gonna move on to the next games. And we do get that little bit of backstory of him, I guess, I guess when the frontman was playing the games himself, where he did kill everyone to sort of make it out alive, and I guess that's why he's the frontman or whatever. Anyways, I just could not get myself invested into like a lot of the stuff that was going on. Even like once we got into I think it was like number 11 when she was trying to retaliate and get off of the island. I thought that stuff was interesting at first, but I felt like it was once again just like meandering too long and like really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Again, it was like the same issue in season 1 where they had they were selling body parts plot line. I'm just like, okay. And it was still doing it in this season. It just feels like they're adding extra complexity to the story that doesn't really add a whole lot besides to fill out screen time, I feel, like you said. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it still has some good moments. Like I think some of the characters was still fun to hang around on.
The games.
Yeah, like my boy Thanos, rest in peace. Like that stuff was still entertaining, but I do feel like the overall story was just kind of repetitive, as a lot of it was already set in season 1. But if you still want to watch like the game portion of the Squid Games, like that stuff is still a ton of fun and creative. The drama is still there, but yeah, definitely just be prepared to get hit in a drop in quality from season 1 to 2 and 3, right? As you know, I probably would rank them in that order if I had to. It would be season 1, then 2, then 3 at the end. But you know, I still enjoyed it for what it was. But that's probably where my Squid Game journey is going to end. I'm not going to watch American Squid Games. That's okay. So,
Thank God. No, I don't want to watch that. I mean, I might. I have fucking A-list. I might see it, whatever. But yeah, Squid Game. I already knew that season 2 and 3 were going to be bad, which is why when I started season 2, and then once we finally got to like the game portion of it, I was just like, I don't really care. So then when I jumped back into it, it was right at that episode where he's like, I played these games before. And then literally after that, every other game's fucking brand new. And I'm like, all right, well, there goes that. But yeah, the game portion is still very, very fun. In season 2 has a lot of new and exciting characters. But by the end of the season, a lot of them die. So then season 3 is kind of just like stuck in limbo, where it's like we have to play the rest of the games out. And they have to make these characters that were kind of like B or even C characters interesting and compelling for us to really follow. And in the end, it was kind of just like whatever. And the whole fucking baby shenanigans or whatever, I was just like, why? Anyways. Well,
like, I guess like last thing I would say.
Yeah.
I will say the finale would, like, obviously I'm not against characters dying, like fan favorite characters dying, but I do think the finale would have been way more interesting if it was a bunch of more good-hearted characters put in that position. Like, if you had the mother character there, would she willingly kill herself so the others can move on and this baby could live? Like, she probably would, but I think that stuff would be more interesting than having a bunch of goons all ganging up on each other, right? Because you know they're all bad people. Mm-hmm. It just makes the finale way more predictable in what's going to happen. But yeah, that's about it with season Squid Game. Like, watch season 1, the rest you could probably skip. So,
okay, let's get into the general news of things. First up, we got another round of layoffs from Microsoft. Roughly 9,000 people have been let go from the company. Various game studios and other studios within Microsoft internally. So, yeah, I guess the big things to really come out of this in terms of like gaming wise is that there was a Perfect Dark reboot canceled. Rare's Everwild also canceled. And I'm sure that there's other stuff that I'm missing here. But yeah, overall, pretty much Microsoft laid off nearly 10,000 people. And that is not good for the games industry. You know, we talk about it every single time, and I will reiterate this idea again and again until layoffs stop happening as consistently as they are. And it's that if you keep laying people off, especially at these big studios, it's gonna have people not want to work in the games industry or work as a indie company and just make games on their own and really not look forward to these really big AAA studio jobs. And, you know, once again, these buyouts, I think a lot of people could really trace back to Microsoft buying out Activision Blizzard as to why these layoffs are happening, because they're trying to consolidate. They're trying to save money because they just got a bunch of new shit. And they're like, well, how the fuck can we save as much money as possible without bleeding so much? And it's like, well, we're just going to have to let people go. And it's fucking unfortunate. Honestly, I really hate that Microsoft has been honestly consistently just like letting people go year after year, months after months even. And Yeah, especially since I feel like as the big three when it comes to Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, they have the most studios to work around with. And the fact they're laying off as many people as they are and canceling as many projects as they are, it seems like their buyout of Activision Blizzard was not as good as some people predicted.
Yeah, it was mostly them just being way too big at that point. Like, Activision Blizzard is such a huge company to just absorb, and it obviously costs a shit ton of money to acquire that deal, that there was no way they were able to manage all these companies, no matter how much like resources you had, right? So all these cuts just end up making sense in terms of like business speak. Like, I don't want to say that because like these are people's jobs and livelihoods, but to them it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Just cut the fat, right? But he ended up, making a lot of people homeless, a lot of people with no jobs. It's just a terrible situation all around, as we keep saying. And all these games are games that people were looking forward to, like the Perfect Dark reboot. A lot of people were excited for that. Everwilds was more of a, that was in limbo to begin with, but it was a new Rare game, and that's exciting in its own right. There was a lot more layoffs as well with, I believe, the Forza people got laid off and a bunch of other studios got laid off. Compulsion Games, that just made South of Midnight, got hit with layoffs as well, I believe. So, it's all these things where it's like, is Game Pass profitable? Is their current business model even profitable? And apparently they said it was, but with all these layoffs and, like when Hi-Fi Rush came out, it got great reviews, people liked it, and then Tango Works got shut down. Compulsion Games, like I just said, they had layoffs and they made a smaller game that was meant for Game Pass, basically, with South of Midnight. So it's like, is Microsoft saying to do these games now or to not do these games? It just seems so lost in the sauce on what to do with their platforms that I feel like anyone working at Xbox or Blizzard or anywhere of these partner studios should definitely be worried about their jobs, or maybe have some backup plan in mind, because they could be just next at this point. And all they really have to do is fire a few executives and they wouldn't even be in this position, to be honest. Like, why make 10,000 people suffer when you could just make these people that probably don't even do their jobs right and maybe fire like 30 of them or something? I don't know. It's not like they're doing their jobs anyway. But
This is
anyway,
like a moral dilemma where it's like, do we let go of 9,000 people, or do we let go, like 10 people or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's just very unfortunate because a lot of these games look like they had a ton of promise, and Microsoft, again, they do publish good games and they do help developers make games they otherwise wouldn't have make. But at the same time, they keep laying off after layoffs. And I'm just like, how much more can this industry really take before it starts crumbling around us, right? And, I think games, like indie games like Deltarune or smaller independent games like Expedition 33 have shown that we don't really need these big budgets. We don't really need these big publishers, as long as these games have enough money and sort of good word of mouth. They could really get around the internet and everyone will talk about them and the games would do well. So, I'm hoping that more studios learn this and not have as maybe inflated budgets or whatever. And maybe these layoffs could stop at some point. But yeah, Microsoft has been an absolute bloodbath lately. And I don't really see it slowing down, unfortunately, just due to how, I guess, bad Microsoft has been doing the last few console generations, right? So
yeah,
unless they could get a real hit on their hand, or maybe Game Pass really spikes in memberships, then I'm gonna keep seeing these layoffs happening in the future, right? And it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and like you said earlier with the whole Xbox Game Pass, like is Game Pass actually beneficial for the industry? It's beneficial for us as the consumer.
Oh yeah, it is. I love it.
I have no idea how Microsoft is even able to make profit off that, because that is like a streaming service where they're able to have all these games on there and have all these studios support Game Pass. But how does it get kicked back to, like small Joe indie studio over there, right? Like when people subscribe for Game Pass for $10 a month, how much of that goes towards the developers of these games and not just Microsoft, right? So, the math and sort of the sort of statistics behind Game Pass are completely unknown. I'm sure we'll find out someday, maybe even like a decade from now. But, right now we don't know how Microsoft is even operating with Xbox gaming and everything like that with Game Pass, because Game Pass is such a good deal. It's like, how do you make that work? And it seems like their way of making it work is to lay people off.
Yeah. So very unfortunate. Hopefully, I mean, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna see more of these, but hopefully this is the worst of it, because that was really bad. Like 9,000 people in like a day is like insane work. But hey,
Yeah.
at least Helldivers 2 is coming on Xbox
right.
on August 26th. I mean, this is cool that Helldivers 2 is coming out multi-platform. It's already been on PC and PlayStation for around a year already. So it's cool that Xbox players get to play it as well. Who knows? Maybe we might get a Switch 2 version now. It probably could run it at this point. So we have like all the console gens, playing Helldivers. And, the game is really good. I heard the recent patches have been really good for this game. It's cool that Xbox players are going to be able to join in on the fun. It's been, that game is a ton of fun. I wish I could put more time into it. Just, a lot of other video games out at the moment, but it is a good time for what I played of it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the only live service games that isn't PvP. It is a PvE game where you are just squatting up with your friends, teammates, whatever, and just mowing down a bunch of monsters. You're going on missions together, customizing your weapons, getting new armor, etc., etc. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I feel like we haven't really had a really solid PvE game like this in a while, and it is locked behind a premium, if you will, but I'm sure that this is gonna launch with Game Pass, I believe, maybe, hopefully. But August 26th, it will release on both Xbox Series X/S, and I believe it will also be cross-platform, because why the hell not? Now everyone could join in on the fun, and then maybe one day the Switch 2 player base can join in on that as well. The big bombshell within the Last of Us news is that Neil Druckmann has stepped away from HBO's The Last of Us. So moving forward, going into season 3, he will not be part of the creative project in terms of writing or directing, anything like that. He's going to focus on Naughty Dog games. He will still be a executive producer, but he will not have his hands on the script or the directing or anything like that. It's all going to be on Craig Mazin. And on top of that, the co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2 video game, Halley Gross, she was part of, I believe, The Last of Us Season 2. She will also be stepping away from the HBO series. So yeah, huge fucking red flag for me personally, because when it comes to season 2, it seems like a lot of the decisions that were made were just not right or correct with the game. Obviously, it doesn't have to be one for one, right? Like, I feel like season 1 did such a good job of making changes where it made sense, while also still staying true to Joel and Ellie, who are the main characters of The Last of Us, obviously. But within season 2, they change a lot of things within Ellie's character that makes it feel like not herself. Like, it is very different tonally, not just from the game version of Ellie, but also just the Ellie that we saw within season 1. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Craig Mazin wanted to deal with the story for whatever reason. And I'm sure that there was some pushback from Druckmann, but I'm sure at a certain point he just had to let Mazin do his thing and then watch the internet unfold and be like, if they're mad, they're mad. Like, obviously he's already felt their wrath from the game. So for it to happen again with season 2, he's like, maybe I should just step away and just let him cook. And last thing I want to say before I hand it off to Damian is that it sucks that Caitlin Dever, who signed on to play as Abby, is now not going to have Neil Druckmann there sort of directing or writing, because I think she's one of the big reasons why she is Abby within The Last of Us. So, to now have her not have Neil Druckmann by her side kind of sucks, because I cannot imagine with her position where she was like, yeah, like I'm going to do this project because she really likes Neil Druckmann and sort of the way that he presented the story of The Last of Us to her. Now it's like, well, now he's not there. So hopefully season 3 gets better, but I have huge doubts about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise to hear that we weren't the biggest on season 2 for Last of Us. There was a lot of issues with it in terms of writing, and a lot of that is because Neil Druckmann was a lot more hands-off for that project, probably because he was busy with Naughty Dog games itself, with Intergalactic, and taking on writing duties for that, and just directing the fucking game in general, I believe. So, those duties are taking away a lot from, making, his whole career basically with Naughty Dog games, and he doesn't want to just focus on the show. So I get it. Like, I get, and I would feel more comfortable with this decision if the writing of season 2 was as good as season 1, where Neil Druckmann was a lot more involved with the writing process. And that it's sort of like it's like, imagine Daredevil Born Again, right?
Oh boy.
But it was like reverse, right? Like it was like, oh, the last two episodes were by like the new creative like writing team, but now they're gonna fucking leave, and then the old creative writing team is gonna be making season 2 of Born Again. It's like, we're in danger, right? Because that part of Daredevil Born Again wasn't the greatest, and the 2 episodes at the end plus the little bits of episode 1 were really good. That's basically how it feels with this Last of Us show, where it's like, okay, now we're gonna be left with no Druckmann to direct the project, which is, like you said, a huge red flag because he probably knows this game better than anyone, especially part 2. So not having his creative guidance, I'm sure he would help if they asked him for it, but it's still pretty sad not to have him in the full creative process anymore, as season 2 definitely felt worse because of his absence, right? People say a lot about Neil Druckmann, and you can say whatever you want about him. It's not like I'm like the biggest stan of him or anything either.
Yes.
But he did make season 1 really good whenever the episodes he was involved in. And the best episode of Last of Us season 2 was like basically all his input, right? So
yes,
having him gone is going to definitely be a big blow for this show. And I guess we're just going to have to see how it goes, especially because the Abby sections are, I think, some of my favorite in the game, which I know is like controversial probably, but I do think the Abby section is my favorite part of Last of Us Part 2. So it's going to be sad to see that not get adapted, the way Druckmann envisioned it in terms of a live action sort of set piece or whatever. But,
yeah.
I guess I'll give them a benefit of doubt. I guess we'll see when it comes out. But from what we've seen of season 2, like I agree with you, it's not looking super great, right? So.
Look, worst comes to worst, we could just watch what Craig Mazin does, and whatever bad shit, crazy decision he does, people are just going to go back to The Last of Us Part 2 and be like, you know what, the game maybe wasn't that bad, But yeah, I am still looking forward to season 3, whether it ends up being good or bad, because it's like I'm already in the fucking hole with this show and this franchise and this series as a whole. So, I'm excited, but I'm very, very cautious. I was already cautious going into season 3, but I'm like even more so. But I will still be there on HBO Max, which is now what they're calling it again. So
yeah. All right, well, speaking of Last of Us Part 2, if you want to experience it in a different way, you can now play the whole game chronologically in a new game mode. So, you're able to experience everything, how it plays out. So I believe you would do like the flashbacks first, I guess, and then go through like Ellie's segment and then go through like an Abby segment, I believe. I haven't seen actual gameplay of this or how it works, but it does seem like a pretty interesting way to play this game. Because this was a big complaint when the game first came out, where people felt like the game was very disjointed, where you would play through all the Abby segments. You play through all LA segments, then you get flashbacks in there, then you go to Abby segments and then get her backstory and stuff. And people didn't like how that was presented, even though that was even in this blog post to say that's basically how we written the game to be. And that should, the default way is how you should play the game to begin with. But this is like a cool extra thing if you want to see how things will have played out in sort of real time. And, there's new trophies and cosmetics you could get as well. And honestly, it does pique my interest. It does seem like something I would do for another playthrough. Maybe when season 3 comes out, I might mess with this game mode, but it does seem like a pretty interesting way to experience the game. Just don't be surprised if it doesn't feel as like good, I guess, as going through the game normally. To even say this is like you shouldn't play this like first or whatever. I don't even think you can't play it first, but it's a really cool extra game mode they added for free, basically. So
yeah, this seems like a mode that should have been in the box with The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, because I think that is such a cool concept for this game, because we do the 2 different perspectives where, we're playing as Ellie and then we're jumping back and forth between the past and present and everything like that. The funniest shit about this mode is that they fucking dropped it the day after I started my new playthrough. I was like, you know what? Let me go and revisit The Last of Us Part 2 for a new video, because, with the whole season 2 controversy, if you will, like not a lot of people liked it, including us. I was like, let me go and replay Part 2. And then they're like, let me just drop this chronological mode. I'm like, God fucking damn it. So I'm still twisted within myself whether I should go back and do this mode, or if I should just continue my original plan. But anyways, just looking at gameplay for this chronological mode, pretty much you start off as playing as young Abby, and then you go through her segments, and then it does the original intro with Joel talking to Tommy, and then it does, I think, all of Ellie's flashbacks in order. So yeah, this is definitely a very interesting way to play it because the flashback sequences are placed strategically where you are supposed to see, where Ellie is after she kills Nora, and then you do a flashback, and then another thing happens within the present day that you do another flashback. Like, there's a reason why they structured the game the way it was, but now you have this new interesting chronological mode, which I think is a fun way to replay the game in a different way, because obviously you will be jumping back and forth between Ellie and Abby doing day one of Seattle between both characters simultaneously. And like when we think about The Last of Us Part 2, I think one thing that I didn't think about when I first played it, I was like, yeah, maybe we should have jumped back and forth between Ellie and Abby. The reason why they probably didn't do that is because it would get confusing with like the upgrades and all of that stuff with like the gameplay segments. I think that would have been confusing. So I think with this chronological mode, you'll probably see that within real time where you're like, oh yeah, I'm playing as Abby, let me go and do some upgrades, and then next cutscene hits and it's like, all right, yeah, you are switching back to Ellie. It's like, god damn it. So that'll probably be a issue, but then again, this is just like a fun mode to see how things actually play out in real time before you get to that moment within the theater. So yeah, I am excited to dive into this. I don't know when. I have no idea what I'm going to do still with my Last of Us Part 2 playthrough dilemma, but this is a cool mode that they added for free, which I think should have been in the box, but at least we have it. Mm-hmm. Last bit of news we got here is Ghost of Yōtei State of Play Gameplay Deep Dive. We pretty much get a nice look at what this new Ghost of game looks like. The newest Sucker Punch Productions project. If you guys know me, I fucking love this studio because of Sly Cooper, and I was a huge fan of Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe I should have played it a little bit more. I mean, I haven't played it since 2020, so it has been 5 years, just like with The Last of Us Part 2, but I'm still excited for this sequel. It seems like that they are adding a ton to the gameplay with the different sword styles, the different weapons that you could use, different strategies, how you do have to switch on the fly with the way you play the game. It seems like a lot of fun and a lot more thought out compared to Ghost of Tsushima, which was still a thought out way of playing a sort of action game like that, but still the fact that they are still adding layers to it is kind of insane.
Yeah, I like the weapon swapping you could do now, because I believe in Ghost of Tsushima, all you really had was like your bow, and you had the different stances you could do, and that was interesting. But in this game, the weapon choices seems a lot more creative. Like, obviously you have a bunch of different swords you could use, like heavier swords, katanas, all that fun stuff. But you also have like the hook blade thing that you could like pull people to you. You have like a gun you could use, a bunch of different little gadgets. It just seems that the combat seems a lot more varied this time, which is appreciative. Since I played Ghost of Tsushima as more as like a samurai rather than an assassin. But it seems with this game, they were, mixing up the combat sandbox a bit more, so it doesn't get as repetitive as you're playing through the game. And other bits they're doing to sort of spice up the gameplay seems to be more like you could talk to NPCs to know where quest locations are, so they really want you to just immerse yourself in the world. And, I think normal Ghost of Tsushima did that really well. With like sort of like the birds and stuff guiding you to points of interest and the like. This game seems to be doing the same thing, but you could like talk to NPCs and learn where things are, and you get like these activity cards or whatever the fuck, and then you can just go to the location. So that's neat as well. The game just has a more open-ended mission structure as well, where you could choose which of I forgot what they're called, but like this band of like mercenaries that killed your family. And I believe there's like 6 or 7 of them or something like that, or 5 of them, I forget. And you could choose which order to like go after them. And I'm sure the main guy would be saved for last. I am a little mixed on that sort of story structure, because I've seen a lot of games do that more open-ended story structure, and the story usually ends up to be a weaker part of the game. When I played Ghost of Tsushima for the first time, I was actually really impressed with the narrative and how much I grew to really like it. With more open-ended stuff, like I know the recent Assassin's Creed games do the same thing, and people have a lot of issues with that. But for me personally, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom also has a more open-ended story structure where you could tackle divine beasts or dungeons at any like point whenever you want. But the story becomes like very incoherent, or you have just like really tiny story arcs you do, and then they sort of come together towards the end, but it never comes together in a super satisfying way. So I wonder if Sucker Punch could really get around that by making a strong narrative, even if it is fractured into like 5 different little pieces you could tackle at any point, right? So I'm interested to see how Sucker Punch handles that, but everything else looks fantastic. Like the game looks really good. There's a lot of side activities you could do. It just looks like Ghost of Tsushima, but bigger and better, right? It looks really good. I was excited for it before, and I'm still fucking excited for it. It looks great.
Yeah, the insane customization options as well with like the armors and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, like they really want the player to play the game how they want to play. Also with the different modes, I think there's literally a goddamn Samurai Champloo mode. There's even really like cool. a sort of old school samurai mode where it's in black and white, but also I think there's like more wind or something like that that they add. I was like, okay, yeah, like they are really giving you the tools to play how you want, and not just within the gameplay, but also just like with the different modes and the customization options, all that stuff. So yeah, this seems like a sequel that was well worth waiting 5 years for, I would say, me personally, no bias whatsoever. But it seems like that they really took their time between 2022 now to really make sure that this sequel lives up to people's expectations of what the Ghost of series can be. So,
yeah, even with the Japanese dub, it's included this time at launch, and it's lip synced like perfectly now. Because I remember that being a thing with Ghost of Tsushima first coming out, where I believe there was a Japanese dub, but wasn't like lip sync correctly. Now you could play the whole game in Japanese, black and white. You could go the whole 9 miles with it, which is really, really neat. So yeah.
Okay, last part of the show. Let's talk about Superman 2025. We're going to dive into full spoilers. This is the start of the DCU by James Gunn, written by James Gunn, directed by James Gunn, executive produced by James Gunn. Pretty much his baby child, if you will. If this shit failed, he would have lost everything within the DCU, in my opinion. Because if this movie was bad, everything else that comes afterwards, no one's going to care about. But I can confidently say before we get into like super duper deep spoilers, this movie really delivered on everything that I would want from a modern superhero movie or Superman movie, if you will. Like the cast is great, the action's great, the story I'll talk about in a bit, with the whole title crawl and everything like that. I think that was a little bit too much for me personally, but I think by the end of it, it really does stick the landing, and I'm excited to see what a sequel for Superman can look like.
Yeah, I mean, my overall thoughts is I really, really enjoyed it a lot. Like, I've heard a lot, the movie seems to be a bit like divisive online. Like some people think is okay. Some people just straight up don't like it. Some people really like it. And I'm definitely in the I really like it camp. I think it really depends on how much you really like James Gunn in general, since the writing feels very Guardians to me. Like it like he has this really distinct writing style of having like a lot of characters, really good ensemble cast, a lot of humor, which, some people have issues with, which I see a lot online as well. But I thought all of it stuck the landing for me personally. Like, I really like all the characters, like you said. I personally really like the humor. I thought it was really funny. And just like the feel of the whole movie, you could tell James Gunn really did his homework on how Superman works and like what to include and not to include. Just how how the movie looks is very bright and colorful. It feels like a comic book movie. Like everything felt like such a labor of love, and it just feels very infectious, where it's like, yeah, this shit is awesome. So yeah, I really enjoyed the movie a lot.
And just to talk about the comic books, I think James Gunn really does bring home that like this is like his first ever comic book movie, really. And he brings up All-Star Superman, and he also brings up Superman for All Seasons. And I actually read those two before diving into this film, like sort of coincidentally. Like I was reading All-Star Superman like leisurely because it's 12 issues, so it's not exactly super duper long, but it was definitely longer than what I was expecting. But the film kind of does feel like that, where there's a lot of shit going on and there's like a lot of different plot threads moving around. So that's kind of like what All-Star Superman is. And then Superman for All Seasons is like a character piece on Superman. If you read anything from Jeff Loeb during this era, which like I fucking hate Jeff. I hate Jeff Loeb because he is a racist piece of shit that fucked up Daredevil season 2. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, just look up Jeff Loeb, Daredevil season 2. But I cannot lie, his writing and sort of the way he talks about these characters during this era. He also did things like Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow, all of those stories. This is something in that similar vein where it's like, it's just a really good story piece on Superman. And if I had to pick between the two comic books, if you wanted to read it before or after Superman for All Seasons is definitely the one that's a lot easier to read because it's only 4 issues long. They're like super size issues. They're like, I think about like 40 pages long, but it's a lot easier to read, and I think it'll give you a much better idea of who Superman is. I feel like All-Star Superman kind of just like throws everything out there and like hopefully you'll get it, which like kind of is what this movie is as well, because first up, just starting off with that title crawl, right? Because that is not something very superhero movie-ish in today's standards, right? Like, we are never thrown into like the fucking middle of the action. Like, we are literally thrown into like everything has already been established in terms of metahumans, in terms of Clark Kent being Superman, even like Lois and Clark's relationship is also 3 months in. There's a lot of stuff that happens within threes at the start of the film. So, the film starts off like that, and it definitely takes a while because of that fact that they start kind of in the middle. It takes a while for me personally to really get invested into this version of Superman.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's like a lot happening. I read a review where someone said it felt like a sequel to a movie we never got, which I do agree. Like, it kind of just throws you into that shit, like, right from the start. You have the conflict with not Israel and not Palestine happening. You got the metahuman situation going on. Lex Luthor already hates Superman, has already been studying him for years at this point. Like you said, Lois Lane and Superman are already a thing. All these things already happened, and we just haven't seen it as an audience. So it takes a bit of time to really get to know what the hell is even going on at first. And I think I don't know why I keep saying game. I think the movie would have benefited a bit from maybe having a bit of a slower start, but it does get you right into the action really fast. So if you're like into that, then yeah, this shit just throws you right in there. But I could definitely see how people think it's like too much happening at once, because it is. And I had that same complaint when I was watching the trailers, where I'm like, this feels like a lot of stuff happening. And once I watched the movie, yeah, it's a lot of things happening, but it does all come together, I think, at the end. And it doesn't feel like too overwhelming once you actually watch the movie, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, like, this was definitely something that I was concerned with as I was watching it. I was like, okay, like, a lot's happening. Where are we going with this? And just to have this movie be about Superman coming to terms of him just being him, just like him valuing life so much. That's the one thing that I love about this movie, is that we see him save so many people and also just save so many living things, like with that dog, with that squirrel, I feel like a lot of superhero movies in general, especially with Marvel as of late, we don't see them help civilians or like save people, right? But like, that's like Superman's shtick. He wants to help people. He wants to save them. He wants to value life, even though his life is like invincible, if you will. Like, nothing can really kill him. He is like indestructible, but he wants to save and protect all these people as much as possible, which is admiring and fun to see.
Yeah, and all those scenes are great. It's why people like Superman as a character, because he's doing his best to make sure no one gets hurt. Like, when he saved the fucking squirrel or the dog, it's like, it showed how much he cares about life in general. And when he was fighting the giant monster, he always made sure to make sure no one was like in the vicinity or no one was getting hurt. He was very careful with his movements. And that's, like you said, that's not something we really see a lot of Marvel movies deal with anymore. Like, we don't really see the superheroes just saving people, right? It's something I liked about My Adventures with Superman as well, as they always made sure Superman in that cartoon was always like making sure the vicinity was clear. He would save any civilians that were stuck in the way. And it's why with Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, why the whole train sequence is so beloved, because you really get to see how much Spider-Man means to the average person, right? Because he's like street level. He gets to know the people he's really saving. And I think this movie does that extremely well. Not even just with the people in Metropolis, but the people in the other country that's not Palestine. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how people could say that this movie is not political whatsoever, because, it's like, literally, it's mirroring that. It's mirroring that in some sort of way, right? Like, and I understand some people's perspective where it's like, it feels very shallow in terms of the way that they're presenting it. But like, my thought process is that, like, the fact that, okay, the movie's doing super fucking well, like, at the box office already. The fact that this is like the biggest summer blockbuster movie so far, and it kind of directly has like a anti-Israel fucking propaganda kind of thing going on here, and people are digging it and people are liking it and enjoying it. That just speaks volumes to like what's actually going on within the politics today, right? Where it's like, yeah, like maybe Israel shouldn't be bombing Palestine and, killing all these fucking people because of the land they want. And yeah, I just want to give James Gunn the sort of props for him to even do that, because I feel like if he proposed that to fucking Kevin Feige would be like, hey, yo, wait, hold up, we can't do that. But obviously James Gunn, he's the new head of DCU. He's like, we're gonna fucking start off with a bang, and this is the way that he wants to do it. Obviously, I wish that we saw Superman stop that war from happening and sort of kicked off the whole, politics and the sort of news outlets from sort of covering it within Metropolis. But I think you could really get the messaging in and sort of get the gist of how impactful that meant when he talks to Lois within the apartment.
Yeah, and that was a great conversation as well. It felt like a very real heated interview of like why he stopped this war from happening, because like those people were gonna die if he didn't step up and do anything, right? They were just gonna grab the land, and he couldn't sit by and just let that happen. And I think that's a very real response from Superman, who is still pretty naive of how, like, I guess Earth works and how human nature is, but that's also what makes him so refreshing to a lot of people, because he just sees, like Lois says, he sees the good in basically everyone and trusts everyone to like be a good person, right? Like almost to a fault, but it makes him feel human, right? And this movie does a great job illustrating how human this Superman is. And I said this during my adventures with Superman as well, but that was always my problem with Superman as a character, was he always felt more like a god or like a deity, especially like the Snyderverse version of Superman, where he just didn't feel relatable. He didn't feel like someone I would feel like in awe of seeing him in real life in the Snyderverse. But in my adventures with Superman and in this James Gunn Superman, he just feels like a dude you could just be like, hey, what's up, Superman, right? I think that relatability is very important to this version of Superman, because his whole conversation with Lex at the end being like, I'm human, like I was born, I was basically raised on this planet, like I'm not like I'm Kryptonian, yes, but this is also my planet too, right? Like I belong here just as much as anyone else, which is also another thing with immigration and immigrants as well, which the world could definitely use a lesson on as well. But I think that stuff really helps elevate Superman in this movie. And I'm happy to see the direction he's going with for this character, as he's not just like this stoic, like godlike figure. He's like this lame-o who just wants to save people. He's always like, oh dang, oh geez, like he's like he's just like a dork, right? And I really like that about this James Gunn Superman a lot.
Yeah, and he puts himself on the front lines 10 times out of 10, pretty much every single time, where it's like, like when Crypto went missing, he was like, I can't fucking find this goddamn
That's my dog. Where's my dog, bro?
So then he's like, well, I guess I'm turning myself in, because he's out there alone somewhere by himself, and, he needs me. So he turns himself in, and I really like how selfless he is. And, on the opposite of that coin, Lex Luthor, when we see Lex Luthor have that figure and sort of have, I guess, also the sort of Superman clone with him to stop him, to be the fucking biggest hater you've ever seen. And Nicholas Hoult, holy shit, man, this guy is so freaking good. I loved his performance as Lex. He was always entertaining on screen. That scene where he kills that one civilian in the fucking pocket dimension, I was like, yo, he really did that shit. Even though he was playing fucking Russian roulette with it, he was like, damn, I guess I killed him on the second try. I was like, yeah, no, this guy is fucking evil, and I love that. And it even comes back together at the end, where he's like, he's having that speech through the sort of Superman clone, and having him do like the inputs of like 1A, 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 like that. Those sequences I was just so amazed by, because it's like he's still fighting Superman in a way, but with his brains, and rather than obviously with fisticuffs.
Yeah, I love that too. I love how much of a certified hater he was this whole movie. It just made him so entertaining every time he was on screen. And, I think James Gunn has had a pretty good run on like making great villains. I mean, the Guardian 3 Evolutionary was also fantastic in Guardians 3. And Lex in this movie is fantastic as well. Like I said, certified hater. Always a joy to watch whenever he's on screen, because he just hates Superman so much. He basically hates all metahumans so much, and he wants his place to be pure, no metahumans and all that. And again, more social commentary there as well. Him wanting to have a land grab in the country to make his own Lex, like Utopia or whatever.
Yeah,
like all that stuff is very like relatable to now, and especially because big billionaires like Elon Musk or like Jeff Bezos to come to mind as well when this dude shows up. So it just makes his villain archetype like all the more like relatable to like audiences at this point. But yeah, I thought Lex was a very good villain throughout this whole movie, and I really liked the fucking Justice Gang as well.
Yes,
You know,
Justice
with,
Gang,
Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl. Like they were all a ton of fun. Especially Mr. Terrific. You know, he was a lot more in the movie than the other two, but the other two also had a lot of great scenes as well. You know, Hawkgirl just straight up like dropping the guy,
kills him.
like fucking kills him, like holy shit. Green Lantern was a ton of fun as well. You know, I really enjoyed their sort of presence in the movie as well. It was good to know that, you know, Superman wasn't alone in like wanting to like do the right thing as well. Like these heroes also want to like help him out and like do good as well, you know? So
yeah, Justice Gang was definitely a highlight for me as sort of like the main side characters that follow with Superman, and they were the ones with him when it was revealed that sort of Jor-El is like evil, if you will, which I'll talk about in just a second. But yeah, Guy Garner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific are fantastic. Mr. Terrific especially, I loved his presence in every single scene. The fact that he was the only one to really step out with Lois Lane and be like, yeah, we're gonna go save him, and him having that entire fight scene with that one song, I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was just like, it was just insane aura farming. And for him to really have that back and forth between him and Superman was also very, very fun. And definitely my second favorite character besides Lex Luthor. But yeah, the other thing that people were sort of talking about is making Jor-El evil. That is a controversial one because I don't think that's really done a lot of the time. But I think having it so when Clark landed on Earth and that second part of the message got corrupted, and then when Lex breaks into this sort of fortress of solitude, and then he recovers that second half, and it's revealed that Jor-El is fucking evil, played by Bradley Cooper, by the way, which was kind of jarring, but not really. That was a pretty crazy twist, but I kind of liked it, you know, even though it's not necessarily something that happens a lot within the comics. I understand why they did it, why James Gunn did it, to really show that, hey, you know, like even though maybe some people have bad parents or maybe certain things happen when they're growing up or whatever, that doesn't mean that they can't be a good person for themselves, right? You know, like nature or over nurture or whatever the sort of philosophy is, right? Like Clark Kent was raised to be a good boy, and that's exactly what he was. You know, I love Ma and Pa Kent. Just like last little bit here before I hand it back to Damian, but yeah, just Ma and Pa Kent. That one scene where he's talking to his dad, I was kind of tearing up. Tears didn't come out, but I was like, man, like this scene is fucking emotional, and I love that they really love Kent and really love that he is Superman and realize that like he is here to do good.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up literally everything you brought up as well, where like, yeah, it really is bringing the whole nature versus nurture thing. Like, just because, you know, maybe the Kryptonians didn't have good intentions for Earth, he ended up, you know, getting raised by good people and wanted to do the right thing. Like, he took that first half of the message to heart of, you know, his birth parents to do good and to actually like save humanity and be its protector, rather than, you know, going all Omni-Man and like taking over the planet or anything, right? And yeah, like you said, the whole scene with Pa, it was really good. Like, and like you said, it almost made me like tear up a bit too. It was a very, very good speech and a beautiful like sort of like sunrise coming up. And that sort of reinforces at the end where he's just like, show me my message of my parents, and it's like, you know, Mom and Pa, like that was good. Like, I'm like, oh man, you're making fucking tear up, bro. Like that was a really good scene, you know. So just like overall, I think that this movie does pretty much everything you would want from a Superman movie. I think that it definitely will benefit from a rewatch because, like I said, the title crawl, it's a lot of information. I think once we got to like this sort of 3 years ago or even like 3 months ago, sort of like that last bit of the title crawl, I was kind of like losing it. I was like, yo, this shit is like a lot to read. And I feel like kids are going to miss out on like what the fuck's happening. Right. But you know, I understand why James Gunn did it. He wanted to really throw a curveball to the audience and really be like, hey, like we're starting in the middle of this fucking story. So buckle in, let's get started, and yeah, go for it. So I really do like that he had the balls to do that. But I do wish that we did see some of that little bit stuff. But I think on rewatches, it'll make a lot more sense because obviously you know what's going to happen. And also you are sort of able to see
where Superman and the rest of the cast are based on the scenes that we got with them, right? It's just that as you're watching it, you're piecing it all together, which means that you'll be more engaged, but at the same time, there's like a lot happening that you have to piece together in your head.
Yeah, it definitely would benefit from having a rewatch, like maybe before the next DCU movie comes out. I would definitely be interested in watching this movie again once it goes on streaming, but because there's just so much going on. But
Yeah.
I think overall, I think James Gunn has just made like just a really, really great Superman movie. Like as someone who's just recently liked the character, I think just taking all the bits that I really liked about My Adventures with Superman and sort of just putting it on the big screen by, making Superman like less of a god and more of this a relatable character, and just having him have real struggles. Like, that helps a lot with making his character just not feel like this just like stoic like deity or whatever, right? Like it does a lot for his character. And I just another thing I really like about the movie is just how comic booky and just like how colorful it looked. Like the whole movie had like a really nice color grading to it, which is something I'm really looking forward to with Fantastic Four as well, where that movie was also like very bright, has really bright colors and stuff, and I love that. And same thing with this movie. There's so many like I guess cheesy effects that I really ended up liking in this movie. Like obviously like the teeth bounce was like a funny thing. The whole scene where all the raptor guards were like going on him and he like fucking like spins them all around, just a spinny laser. Like it looks like so like cartoonish, but like I love it too because it's like it feels like I'm watching like a comic book movie, right? And I think that just adds a lot to this genre that I feel like has been getting a bit stale for a lot of people. Like I feel like it adds a lot of extra flair and pizzazz to it because they're like comic book characters. They should be able to go a little crazy sometimes with it,
Yeah, just let them do their thing, let them use their abilities to its full extent. And Superman, David Korsnet, he is him. He's fucking Superman.
Yeah, and he was aura-farming so much in the later half. I'm like, God damn, bro.
I just cannot wait to see where this cast goes next. Hopefully we get Superman 2 sooner rather than later. But is there anything else you'd like to add, Damian?
Nope, that was about everything.
All right, so thank you guys for listening to the Travis and Damian podcast, episode 167. We will see you guys 2 weeks from now with another episode.
See ya.